Dr Reena here. I'm a dental specialist and founder of RW Perio, located at 75 Harley Street. Welcome to my podcast, Life and Smile, where we talk about everything dental, lifestyle, business, and much more. Every episode, I'm joined in conversation with a specialist expert in their chosen field, who give us a behind-the-scenes glimpse into their daily regime, career turning points, and an insider look at what they can't live without. As a businesswoman myself, it's so inspiring to hear how people have built their careers and shattered those glass ceilings. So let's get the conversation going. Our guest today has famously been described as the most interesting commentator of the new generation. You will no doubt recognise his voice instantly. He's a household name, broadcasting and commenting on cricket for the BBC as part of their Test match special team and providing updates on 5 Live. And that's just the start. He has one of those voices that you can just talk with and listen to extensively. And I'm so delighted to be able to bring him to the Life and Smile conversation for season 2 of this podcast. It is, of course, Daniel Norcross. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Reena. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. So, as I already mentioned in your introduction, you've built such a successful career. But let's take it back to the very beginning. Tell us, where did it all start? How did it all start?
How did the cricket bit start, or the broadcasting start?
Broadcasting and cricket.
Right. Well, the broadcasting began much later than it really should have done, to be honest with you. Because when I left university, I didn't have the faintest clue what I wanted to do. I did a broadly speaking useless degree. I did a degree in Latin and Greek, which doesn't have many practical applications other than teaching Latin and Greek.
Sure.
And I wasn't particularly good at Latin and Greek, so that put that out. And I spent a year making money out of quiz machines, taking money out of them by learning all the answers.
Oh, right.
So for a year, I sort of thought, what am I going to do? I'll go to the pub and think about it. And I put £1 in a quiz machine, and I could get £20 out. And then I'd go to another pub, do the same thing. And my mother pointed out that this was a deeply unproductive way to spend your life. But at 23, you're slightly resistant to this advice. And then I found myself working in the internet, which had just started. I mean, the internet itself hadn't quite in 93, 94, but people were starting to use something called electronic data interchange to send messages between banks and whatnot. And that grew into the internet, and I happened to be working with a guy who was a former city journalist, and he had this idea that we start an online travel agency, which was a brilliant idea. But unfortunately, we did it exactly the same time as lastminute.com. And in 1996... it's hard to believe, but the internet believed that if there was one travel agency, there could be no others. Right. Now we know, of course, that the internet means you can have literally thousands of everything and everyone competes. So that sort of morphed into, by pure accident, ending up working in the city as a project manager on internet projects because I'd worked in startups. And I enjoyed the interaction with people, but I was pretty hopeless at it, really. I mean, project management is quite an ascetic thing to do. It doesn't feel massively creative. The creativity comes really from interaction with the people you work with, which was all well and good, but I wasn't awfully good at, wearing the right suit, arriving on time, being on the tube. These are all things that didn't really work for my temperament. And when I was made redundant for the third time, because essentially as a project manager, you are open to the vicissitudes of fate. So when there was a crash in 2000, they get rid of project managers. When there was a crash, most notably in 2008, they get rid of them. And I found myself at 40 years old thinking, I haven't actually done anything that I really wanted to do in the last, whatever that would have been, 16, 17 years since leaving university. But the one thing that I had always adored from the age of 7 was cricket and the theatre of cricket, the sound of cricket. I'd grown up with the noise of people like John Arlott and Brian Johnston and Christopher Martin Jenkins and Tony Cozier, the great West Indian commentator. And I thought, I can't miss this Ashes series coming up in 2009, which not everybody listening to this podcast will understand the context, but in 2005, the greatest single series of Test cricket took place, and I missed it all making spreadsheets, and I was very resentful of that. So in 2009, I thought, right, that's it. I'm going to make sure I watch this. So I needed an excuse, and I needed a business idea. And my wife was looking at me going, when are you going to get a job? And I said, well, how about I set up an alternative cricket commentary which can be heard around the world, because all sports are kind of dominated by rights.
Yeah.
And the BBC had rights, but they had rights to Britain, basically.
Okay.
And the internet gives you access to the world. So I thought, if I create a service that can be heard around the world, I've suddenly got a massive market. And I naively thought that this might make money, but I also thought that it would give me the opportunity to buy enough time to watch the Ashes using the redundancy money I'd got from the crash in 2008. And to cut a long story short, that then ballooned into something I never imagined. We managed to find we got lots of comedians to come on, Mark Steele, Miles Jupp, Rory Bremner, and what have you. So we created this kind of essentially comedy sound of cricket. And we were also really upsetting the BBC and the people who ran cricket, but they couldn't do anything about it because it's not illegal to watch telly and talk about it on the internet. It is still just a free country. So there's no way you can suppress that. And what always happens in these situations, especially in Britain, is that the establishment, once it realises that it can't stop you doing something, says,
you to join in.
do you want to join us instead?
Yeah.
And then you think, well, it'd be a bit nicer to have my travel expenses paid and be at the ground and, be heard by millions rather than heard by 100,000. So that's the genesis. That's how it happened.
Right.
And
so that was your test match sofa, was it?
That's right. Yeah, test match sofa, which was a rather ill-disciplined bunch of middle-aged men and women. I specifically wanted lots of women on the program because that was something that didn't happen on the BBC at the time, and it was an alternative, unusual noise, really, and it's still going in a different guise. So I left it, and the people who came on the journey with me have now rebranded and still do it. And it acts as a kind of nursery, really, for people who want to become cricket commentators and cricket reporters full time. And I'm very proud of that. That's still happening.
Brilliant. What a journey.
Was rather,
and you're renowned for often placing quite an unusual perspective into the commentary box. And you spoke about, obviously, cricket. You drew from when you were at the age of 7. You mentioned the sort of drama of it, the noise of it. But what is it? Is that what makes it so special? For someone who's new to the game, perhaps, what would distinguish cricket from anything else?
Well, that's a very good question. I think what I find so intoxicating is that it's a game that stops and starts. And so when it's broadcast, the broadcasters themselves have to give you a much wider range, a breadth of human experience in the description of what they do. Because essentially, somebody bowls a ball, somebody either hits a ball or misses it. And that part of the action takes, it can take up to 10 seconds, and it could take as little as 1 second.
Right.
But then you have to wait for another 45 seconds for something else to happen. Well, the bowler goes back and comes in, bowls again. And in that space, all of humanity can reside. Whereas, I enjoy all sports, but if you listen to football commentary, the commentator has to tell you that the ball's gone there, to this person, to that person, and it's crossed over, it's banged in. Has he scored? No, he hasn't. You take a breather. In cricket, you have these longueurs. And in the longueurs, you can fill that with, as I say, with human experience. And so the chat, the conversation around it,
more depth to it.
Is way more rich, isn't it? It's way more rich because actually there are points, especially in a long day of Test cricket. The games are very different. If you have a T20 game, which is a short form game, lasts 3 hours, there's quite a lot of action takes place, and there's slightly less chance for deviation. But in a Test match, which can last 5 days, there can be literally 2 or 3 hours where very little is actually happening, and that's the point when you find yourself sat next to Phil Tufnell, whose life experience is ludicrous and absurd. He's been on Strictly Come Dancing. He's won I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. He's been on every single reality TV show that's ever been made. And you can just meander into places that he's been and you've been. And, I remember having a conversation with him about how clouds were looming that looked like zombies that were sort of gathering around a supermarket in a 70s horror film. And then we had a 10-minute conversation over the motivation of zombies in 70s films and where they would or otherwise wouldn't gather. Now, I mean, that's not really sport, is it?
No.
So,
Oh wow! So it can really get interesting. Yeah,
gets a bit surreal sometimes. Yeah.
So obviously you've, as you described in your career, you were involved with the setting up Test Match Sofa, and then now you're doing lots of work for the BBC. Obviously, everything, although it's been with cricket, your career has varied quite a lot in terms of what you do and what you're involved in. What would you say has been the highlight or highlights of your career that you'd most want to live again, would you say, so far?
Well, I mean, it's the people that you get suddenly to meet as much as anything else, because there are so many, that cricket attracts such a broad breadth of people, Mick Jagger, Stephen Fry, but it's comedians, politicians, writers. I had even this year, I had an absolutely beautiful 3 days with the actor Tim Key, who appears in the Alan Partridge stuff. You might recognise him. And we got to know him a little bit because he then came and he wanted to watch more than just one day. So he came in for one day and then hung around in the place that we were staying in. And we went out in the evening, and I guess it's developing a deeper rapport and a shared love of sport. That's one aspect, which is really beautiful. You just make very different friendships with inspiring people who can be very funny, or they could be very high achieving, or whatever. But I suppose the one single block of thing I'd like to repeat was I went to the Ashes in 2017-18, and you go around every single city in Australia twice, because I was doing the Test matches and then the one-day internationals, and you spend 11 weeks in a country.
Gosh,
you get a bit of an idea of where it's coming from. When you go on holiday for 2 or 3 weeks, I always think that once you get to the 3-week point, that's the point when you think I might actually just not come back. One week isn't enough to get to know it. 2 weeks is probably enough to go back home and feel all right about it. 3 weeks, you're thinking, oh, it's a wrench. If you spend 11 weeks somewhere, you get to go through that period and then back out the other side. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
what was your favourite city then?
Oh, Melbourne.
Yeah.
I love Melbourne. I mean, I thought it would be Sydney.
Okay.
But I think I've come to the conclusion that I'm a bit too old for Sydney. Isn't that bizarre? I'm only 53, but Melbourne seemed. Melbourne's. I'm a Londoner, so Melbourne felt more like London.
More like London, yeah.
Sydney felt a little bit like you had to be about 25 years younger, beautifully bronzed with a six-pack, really to survive it, for the rest of your life.
No, it makes sense. So live broadcasting obviously requires an expert skill and approach where you're permanently surviving off adrenaline, and you need to be surely prepared for every scenario to take place. Are there any career scenarios where you really had to think on your feet and sort of save the day as such?
Well, I mean, only the other day, I guess, would be a good example. I mean, there are many occasions in which you have to do that, incidentally, because you're interviewing people live. So if you have what's called View from the Boundary is an interview segment that they do on a Saturday during a Test match. And it's 35 minutes long, and it's the longest live interview on the BBC network. So all the other interviews you see, with Stephen Sacker or whatever, they're all pre-recorded if they're longer than that.
Okay.
So it can be nerve-wracking if you have. I mean, I had Keith Allen on, and Keith Allen was a bit of a firebrand back in the 80s and 90s. He had a reputation for storming out of interviews. And my producer said very blithely, "Oh, yes, it's Keith Allen you're interviewing on Saturday." I went, "What? Are you crazy?" But it turned out that, if you do enough research, you find out enough about him, you find out what makes him tick, you spend 10 minutes before with him, you can get a really lovely interview out of him. And he was brilliant. He was great fun to be with, but he was daunting and terrifying. But then you get stuff that happens with very little warning at all. And so we're recording this just after the death of the late Queen. And on Thursday we were on air, and we got to know that this scenario was unfolding. And so you then you think, oh, crikey, or you're sort of prepared for it because you think about the scenario a bit, but you only think about it so theoretically. You think, come on, I'm on air for 65, 70 days of the year. What's the chances? And then you think, actually, it's 1 in 5. So I probably better be prepared for it. And then it did happen. And then you suddenly have to go into an entirely different mode because you've got an awful lot of people's sensitivities to think about, whatever your views are on it. and however your feelings are. You know that there are tens of millions of people who are grieving at this point, and you can't afford to upset them. So that will happen. Hopefully not too soon again. So that would be an example.
Yeah.
And I guess generally, you find yourself in these situations from a technical commentary point of view, where Alistair Cook is a very famous man in cricket terms, and his last innings he played for England in 2018, and I was on commentary when he was reaching his 100. And he very annoyingly got to his 100 with an overthrow, which for those who don't understand, he'd hit the ball in one direction, and then the ball was thrown by the fielder, and it went miles in the other direction. And I was watching him to make sure he wasn't run out. I didn't know where the ball was. And my co-commentator's like tugging at my arm and pointing at the ball. Oh, God, he's going to reach 100. You can't miss that moment because that moment gets archived and is replayed over and over and over again. So you constantly have to adapt to circumstance and think on your feet. But that's actually the fun of it.
Yeah, and I was going to say, is that what you most love about the kind of unpredictability, the you got to be on your feet, the adrenaline?
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't do no preparation. I do very little preparation in the formal sense for a game. So some of my colleagues will write out huge, great reams of notes, literally tens of thousands of words. And it works for them. For me, it has the opposite effect, because if I have lots of words in front of my eyes get drawn to that rather than to what I should be looking at out there.
Yeah.
So I have to kind of rely on my brain remembering and finding the bon mot or the right fact in the right moment, which means that I'm essentially constantly petrified, but at the same time extremely energized.
Yes. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes complete sense. And obviously you've achieved so much in your career so far. What is it that's driven you? Obviously the love of the sport is key in this. But is there any particular person that inspires you? Any particular book that you like to read? Any, one in the industry that you admire or aspire to be like?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think when you decide that you want to go in a particular path, especially if it's a sort of, broadly speaking, creative or performative path, then you're sort of inspired by what other people have done before. So the very great cricket commentators of the past, people like John Arnott that I've mentioned and Tony Cozy, they had such rich, wonderful vocabulary. They had such a great way of evoking time and space that as a child you were in awe of it. And then you sort of saw this thing. And I loved cricket because my father basically watched cricket all the time. And you might be familiar with this, but my mother would be in one room doing what she would be doing, and I would be with her until I was about 7 or 8. And then I thought, wouldn't it be interesting to meet my father? So I went into the sitting room and found my father watching cricket with the curtains closed in the middle of summer, so it didn't glare on the TV.
Yeah.
And then that's how I got into cricket, really. And so I associated it strongly with him. So in terms of the inspirations, I mean, the gateway to it was wanting to develop a relationship, I guess, with my father, then falling in love with the game. And the way that he introduced it to me was in part TV, but largely radio, because we would have to go on holidays, which would be dreadful, and in those days would mean driving for miles and miles. It didn't fly anywhere in the 1970s if you could afford not to. And so you would hear these voices coming through, and that was how I would receive it. And so I don't try to emulate those people, because you can't do that in broadcasting, in any walk of life, writing or anything. You can't try to be the same person that they were.
Yes.
But what they do is they inspire you into expressing your personality. Yes. So every broadcaster will tell you this, that if you want to be good at broadcasting, you have to be you at all times. But, there are some people who are actually quite unpleasant, but they're very, very good broadcasters because they have a kind of like some nasty persona and it's very charismatic. And then there are people who are incredibly warm and lovely, and they're lovely broadcasters for a different reason. And what you've got to be is yourself at all times. And so, I mean, those are the ones who did it best are the ones who had the biggest personalities, and they're the ones who inspire you most, I think. Yeah,
that's such an important point, though, that you made, that you don't have to copy. If you aspire to be like someone, you don't have to copy them, but you use them as inspiration to be your own. Because oftentimes you think you have to be an exact copy of that person. So Yeah. I mean, obviously we're from contrasting industries, but I do a little bit of media work. Obviously we've got the podcast and so on. Do a little bit of teaching, all those kind of things. And I have to ask you, I still get nervous just before I'm doing like a big talk. Do you
Mm.
still, after all these years, do you still get nervous? Or
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think I've never been as nervous doing this. It was 2 times. It was the first time I did it on a men's international, because that's when lots and lots of people are listening. And literally my whole world went down to almost a tiny little pinprick. And I wanted to jump out of the window and say, why am I here? What are you doing, you crazy lunatic? You're not good enough to do this. And then you sort of, the anxiety went away the moment I started talking, actually. It was quite strange because the moment a wicket had just fallen, somebody came out to bat, and you realise all you've got to do is describe it. So, all right, here comes Owen Morgan walking to the crease, and suddenly words are coming out of your mouth, and you think, fine. And then the other time I was at my most nervous was Saturday, 4 or 5 days ago, when we went back on air after we were off for the first day, because the words I was going to use were going to have to be slightly modified. And so much of live broadcast is about not having to think about the words. I mean, good words will pop into your head, and conversations happen organically. But if you're suddenly thinking, I can't, there's a phrase in cricket, we say, the ball's died on him there and it's gone through to the keeper. We can't say that 2 days after the Queen's died. I know it sounds mad, but you can't. Yeah. So suddenly you are halfway through, sort of about to say it, and then you have to think something differently. Yeah. So you're then on high alert. But actually, I mean, those are examples of me being petrified. Every new game that starts, so I've got a game on Sunday coming up, and my first stint, we do 20 minutes at a time, I will be nervous because I won't be quite sure of my setting, even my chair, where the scoreboard is, what I should be looking out for. Because what you're doing in cricket commentaries, you're taking this space and then you're trying to bring it to life for listeners. And until you've absorbed that space in your head, it's hard accurately to bring it to life.
Right.
So you are a little bit nervous because you're not in your idiom yet.
Yeah.
And at the beginning of every season, actually, when I first start, having not done it for 3 or 4 months, I feel strangely nervous. So I think it's necessary, actually.
Yeah. You need that adrenaline kick in the beginning.
Absolutely, because it really sharpens your mind, and it means what happens is you absorb things really, really quickly.
Yeah.
And then you're able to deal with the moment.
Yeah. I guess it's that fight and flight response.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's exactly that. Yeah. Yes, I think so.
So I guess over the years, the broadcasting industry must have changed, pivoted over the last few years. What's your opinion on, do you think there's now a stronger demand post-pandemic for live sport? Has there been a shift in, because I know in the health industry, there's been a real shift in what people's priorities are, sort of a health-first approach. How is it in your industry?
It's a good question, isn't it? I mean, the things that changed were initially, when we came out of the pandemic, there was a massive thirst for hospitality.
Okay.
So in the lead up to 2020, things got a bit sort of tired, actually, in the sporting world. You'd have the same charities doing the same events. And because my job is broadcasting, but it's also, you host events and you do this, that and the other. And they'd all got a little bit same old. And then because 2 years spent away from the company of other people, I think that sort of reinvigorated that whole area, the hospitality industry.
Right. Also,
in terms of live sport, I think we discovered just how much we missed live sport. So live sport stopped in late March 2020. And then football came back around about late May, early June, but only just behind closed doors.
Yeah.
And then cricket came back in late June, early July, was it? I think maybe early July. And we were doing these games, again, behind closed doors. We were staying in a hotel on the ground in Manchester and in Southampton. And it was eerie, a very strange thing to be doing, because when you commentate, the noise of the crowd lifts you. Yeah. There's no crowd. So you feel a bit self-conscious. It's 1 for 6. Who cares?
Silence,
no one's there. But weirdly, when we did it, we were inundated with emails and tweets and messages from people saying, thank God you're back, you've saved our life. And I thought, this is all a bit overblown. I mean, it's only me talking about cricket, for heaven's sake. But the loneliness, I think, and the need for normality, and sport represents for a lot of people and the normal functioning of their lives.
Yeah.
It provides their rhythms, their seasons. We talk about the cricket season, the football season, all these things are things that form building blocks for people's lives.
Routine, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think that an appreciation of what live sport can do has certainly been enhanced by the lack of it.
Right.
What I've also noticed, though, is that I don't know if you feel like this too, but it's amazing how quickly we've forgotten some aspects of COVID, how quickly normality comes back. Don't you
agree.
find?
Yeah, I completely agree. Feels like a long time ago, but it's still we're kind of still in it.
No, it was only a year.
Yeah,
I mean, it's only a year since the pandemic, wasn't it?
When exactly.
all those things were happening, and they feel like a decade ago.
I completely agree that it gives you a whole new appreciation for. It's like when if one of my friends, fractured his arm, and then once you fracture, like, oh my god, my arm's like really useful, and then when you get it back again, you have this newfound appreciation. So I think it's a bit like that. So it's there are I guess some benefits of appreciating things more, for sure. So you've described your kind of schedule, and I know from meeting you many times, there's periods where it's really intense, and then quieter periods. So, and you're obviously traveling all the time, adapting to multi locations. Do you have a typical day in the life?
No, I don't really. So if I have a test match, it can either be in London, in which case I'm at home. So that looks a bit more like when I used to have a 9-to-5 job. I'll leave in the morning at 9. I get back later. I get back at 7:30, 8 o'clock, because the game goes on longer and commitment's longer. And then I'll eat with my wife, and we'll watch telly and go to bed. And that is very much like a normal day. Then if you're away, you're staying in a hotel with your colleagues, and so you inevitably go down to the hotel bar and spend too long in there, because essentially you're decompressing at the end of a day's commentary. The funny thing is that the adrenaline builds up so much that you can't put it to bed, so you end up kind of going through the day's events with your colleagues and getting to bed too late. But then that's a test match. I will have a one-day game, and that could be like going there and back or staying overnight. Or there's a tour, and that's a little bit more problematic. So shortly, in early October, I'll be going to Australia for 6 weeks for the World T20, which is a short-form tournament. And then you're away from home, and my wife won't come out because she has work to do as well over here. So you miss your loved ones for 6 weeks. It's quite
a long time.
It is a long time. Don't get me wrong. I mean, the first week and a half is jet lag and novelty. But after that, it starts to be, I really would just like to eat something simple in front of, only murders in the building. And which sounds like I'm being ungrateful, really, because, I might be in Adelaide eating oysters, which sounds absolutely fantastic, but you're not doing it with your wife. You're doing it with the people you see every day. And so you have to adapt to that. You have to be quite self-sufficient. You spend a lot of time inside hotel rooms. So it's actually helped me read a lot more.
Okay.
And watch things that I otherwise wouldn't have watched. And sightsee. I mean, you find yourself going for walks in cities that you don't know, which is lovely. I mean, it's
for sure.
It's really pleasant. And then, of course, you get the downtime. And the downtime is challenging because you want to be productive. And so, you do a combination of things. You research stuff about cricket because that's your job. But you try to clear your mind as well, because there's a great phrase by a terrific Trinidadian writer called C.L.R. James, who says, "What do they know of cricket who only cricket know?" So in order really to make sense of this that you're watching in front of you, you need to have a far greater breadth of interests,
For sure.
So you'll sort of, you'll find out what's on the Booker shortlist, and you'll read all of them. Just something so that you can bring different things into your conversations and when you're working. But it can get quite strange. I mean, this January, for example, there's no cricket to speak of, and it's the gloomiest, darkest time of the year. And for all the glamour of being able to go abroad and all to these wonderful places, for those 4 weeks, I will sit unproductively in London, I'm pretty sure. My wife will be upset because Strictly Come Dancing's over. We'll be watching police procedurals on a Sunday night, and you'll be in the darkness of winter. So no, there's
no typical day.
There is no typical day, I'm afraid. But I love that.
That's part of
though.
the variety, I guess.
I love it.
Yeah.
I mean, I always say, Reena, that essentially for my job, if I've got work, I'm happy because I want to do that more than anything else. And if I'm not working that day, I've got the day off.
Yeah.
So
great.
What am I complaining about?
Yeah, good all around. No, makes sense. So we always ask as a final question to our guests, like particular things you can't live without. But also for you, I guess, are there any rituals that you as such perform before a match, or any particular items you have to have around with you, no matter where you are, whether at home or traveling? I'd be really interested to find out.
You've touched on something that's quite sensitive to me here, because I've ever since I was a child, I've had certain OCDs, and most of them have only actually been knocked out of me by being witnessed. So it's a very strange thing to say, but before I met my wife, or before I lived with my wife, I used to check under the bed, because there's a horrifying scene in Friday the 13th in which one of the characters is killed by the murderer who's lying under the bed, and I watched that when I was 12. And so every night, wherever I was, even if there was quite a low divan, I would look under the bed. I would look behind the curtains, because I saw Don't Look Now, which is that really scary Nicholas Roeg film with a killer, a very short killer in a red jacket.
Oh, gosh.
And so I'd even look in the washing machine if I was at home, just in case the killer was in that. And so I'm saying all this to give you an idea. Essentially, I had loads of rituals.
Right.
And they were kind of knocked out of me by having somebody look at me doing it and saying, "What on earth are you doing?" And only through humiliation did I actually get through most of them. But there are some things I still do before I leave the house.
Yeah.
I don't do full feng shui, but I have to have everything washed up.
Right. Okay.
Everything. I have to have my bed made, everything washed up.
Yeah.
And things put away neatly.
Sounds like my husband, actually.
Right. Well, I can understand why.
Yeah, there's that kind of...
Because if
you can't focus,
Well, if you leave a messy house, you take it with you.
Correct.
Is the way I feel.
Yeah.
So, I could see.
Yeah, I think there is a study of people who do make up their bed in the morning, those who don't, and how their day goes after that. Definitely,
who wins?
Yeah, well, definitely the ones who do it. So, yeah, there's something in that order and kind of that OCD as such.
Yeah, I mean, it feels kind of silly, and I have missed trains because of that.
Oh, wow.
Which has been really silly as well. And I'm not going to even take you into the issues I have with the numbers number 3, 39, and 13.
Really?
Yeah, they yes, I don't care for them. I have favourite numbers and I have unfavourite numbers. All of these things are a little bit challenging if you're a cricket commentator, because those numbers crop up quite a bit.
Yeah.
So I have a slight blanch if someone's on 13 and the score's 39 for 3. Even saying it is quite painful. But yeah, I need a tidy house. I need to have the clothes on that are going to make me feel comfortable where I'm at. It's mad when you're on the radio to think like that, but actually, you set your example. If I go in with clothes I'm not happy with, I can't do the thing I'm doing very well. I need to feel utterly relaxed. Now, in my case, because it's a very informal atmosphere, I get to choose whatever the canvas is, but. Although my wife mostly chooses it because I'm colourblind, but that's very important to me. And other than that, I need a pen and a pad, which I hardly ever use.
Okay.
I was asked to there was an article on notes that commentators made, and the writer saw my notes. He said, "Can I see your notes for a test match?" And all I had written down was Birmingham, inspiration for J.R.R. Tolkien's. Where's the bad bit in the Lord of the Rings? Is it Middle Earth? What's the bad bit?
Oh gosh.
Wherever the bad bit is.
Yeah.
And I'd written that down, and I'd written nothing about the cricket at all, and that was all I'd written down over 5 days. So I have it there as a kind of crutch,
there, yeah.
And I also have my binoculars,
right?
Because you're 120 yards away. So every now and then, you can't quite recognise somebody or someone who's come on the field.
Yeah.
So those are the only things that I really need. I travel pretty light, and I like to travel light where at all possible, because I like to have as little encumbering me. When I broadcast, I want to be exactly that. I want to have a clean and tidy house and very little in my bag, and just have
focus on
the space in front of me, because that's big enough, quite frankly, to be dealing with without having a great heavy bag stuck over your shoulder.
Yeah. Makes complete sense. How interesting. Well, listen, I know you are super busy with everything at the moment. So just to say thank you so much for being on the podcast. I'm sure everyone will find it a super interesting conversation. Tell us, where can we follow you? I'm sure everyone knows you already, but what's your Twitter handle and where can we follow all your updates?
Well, my Twitter handle is @Norcross Cricket. That's NORCROSS, as in neither angry nor cross, followed by cricket. And I do a podcast called Zero Ducks Given. And of course, I'm on BBC. So there'll be, when cricket matches are on, I'm likely to be on, but we are rotated on and off. So, you might catch me there, or you might catch me on BT Sport or wherever. But Twitter is @Norcross Cricket, where I opine occasionally.
Amazing. Thank you so much, and look forward to inviting you back to Harley Street again soon.
Thank you, Reena. It's been a joy.